Author opinion of Dennis Keen at the History, Geography and Architecture, Culture and Life Manners of Kazakhs in the program Discovering Kazakhstan.
In today's program, buried gold in the Valley of the Kings, traveling through time in Ulkin Narin, Akbaur, an ancient observatory made of stone.
Salam, привет, and hello. I'm Dennis Keen, and today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we will be discovering the fascinating history of Eastern Kazakhstan. This part of the country is famous for the Altai Mountains, a scenic range that for centuries has attracted different civilizations, from nomads like the ancient Scythians and of course the Kazakhs to settlers like the Russians. And each of these civilizations have left their traces in layer upon layer. Come along as we unpack these layers and explore the people and places that make this land a historian's dream. We start our journey in a remote valley outside of the eastern Kazakhstani village of Burel. For archaeologists who study ancient nomads, this is a legendary place. Excavations here have uncovered evidence that the Scythians, nomadic ancestors of Kazakhs, once had a complex and fascinating civilization. This is important because for hundreds of years, travelers and scholars writing about Central Asia figured that nomad societies were primitive and poor, while all along, the evidence for the sophistication of nomads was right below their feet, hidden in burial mounds. Within this fenced-in territory here are more than 100 burial mounds that archaeologists have found. More than 50 have been uncovered, and they have revealed the treasures of the Scythian people in this Valley of the Kings, as they call it. At the entrance, you know you have arrived because you see this wooden wheel. This represents a chariot that was found that was once used for the leaders of these people. And atop there, an animal, a kind of griffin, this mythological creature that Scythians once worshipped. This Valley of the Kings, as they call it, has a special atmosphere here. It's totally uninhabited. There are no villages for miles around. And archaeologists say that it's always been this way, that this was a place that was reserved for burials. And thus there are more than 100 of them here in this quite narrow valley. And I think we can understand why they chose this place. It has this striking landscape. On either side here, we have these charismatic mountaintops, these forests, and it's this special even scent here, the smell of sage, the sound of insects, the quiet, the feeling of the air of the Altai coming down from the mountains. I can understand that the nomads would have once walked here, looked around and thought, yes, this is the place. This is the place where we will honor our dead.
We are right now in Valley of Kings. We call this place. Here was pantheon, ancient pantheon of ancient kings, 3rd century of before Christus. And here is barrow number 5. We are from East Kazakhstan State University. So 2 months we worked here.
In 2 months, you've made a lot of progress. You've dug all of this.
A lot of progress, yes.
You live here, you work here.
We live here, you work here.
You eat here.
We sleep here.
Sleep here.
Sleep here.
Yeah.
So we have here, it's a home.
Right.
Was a home, but home of death.
Looking down into the chamber, you can see a Scythian from the Iron Age, buried with sacrificial horses. Flakes of gold suggest that this could be a discovery on par with the Altan Adam, or Golden Man, a Scythian warrior found with golden armor in 1969 who has since become a symbol of Kazakhstan and its history of great civilizations. As our friends are covering up this newly excavated kurgan, here we have come to kurgan number 2, which has long been covered in quite a nice way, I think. They've made what they call a museum under the open sky. We have the structure here with these kind of windows right over the open dig itself. And by going down into the ground, we can actually see the finds where they were originally found. So let's go underground and see what it looks like. This is so cool to see. This, what would have once been this kind of dusty, mucky architectural dig where only the scientists wearing their vests could come down and actually see what they were working on. And here, you and me can actually come and see the dig itself. They built this big dome out of glass and steel above us, letting in the light. And we can come and see the actual bones of the horses that were buried here. They say there were 7. And that suggests that this person had quite some rank who was buried here. Nomads would often, of course, ride their horses from pasture to pasture. It was a very important animal for these people back then and now. And it's thought that they would want to take their horses with them into the afterlife. Over here in this other chamber, this wood, of course, has been recreated. We have this kind of coffin. And inside, they say, there was a woman found, perhaps some kind of princess, some kind of nobility, and that this person here must have been held in high esteem in this Scythian society to be given such a grand burial. And we really have an amazing opportunity to be here ourselves in what was once a kind of remote place covered in rocks and ice, and now it's here under the open sky. The lights can shine in, and we can experience this for ourselves. Wow, well, it is really coming down now. It's a good thing that they were covering up those horses and those fresh excavations, because this weather could really do some damage. It's a good thing also that we have a place to find some shelter. We are now inside the Burel History Museum. For me, the Burel Museum is something that's really special because I'm used to these museums where important artifacts like these are kept behind glass with a big alarm system, and there's stern security guards standing around and they won't let you get up and look at it. But here, these are incredible finds from more than 2,000 years ago that are right here before our very eyes, including even this. This piece right here, this piece of wood, is part of the coffin that was holding some kind of Scythian royalty. And here it is, just on the ground right next to us. And it may be wrapped in this kind of plastic wrap, but to be able to look at this and think that this wood was once crafted by people so many hundreds of years ago is really breathtaking. Every display case here has something fascinating for us to look at. In this one, we see what I at first thought were some kind of talons from a bird, but are in fact fangs from wild hogs. It turns out that for ancient Scythians, these fangs must have played some kind of important role, and they might have been used for some kind of jewelry. Speaking of jewelry, in this next case, just look at these bracelets. This looks like something that I could get in a store these days in the city where I live in Kazakhstan, Almaty, which is full of these fancy jewelry stores. But in fact, these are the very beads that were found within these burial mounds. Looking at the quality of these, it is very hard to believe, but all they've done is cleaned them, collected them, bought some modern string and strung them along there. It's this beautiful kind of color of coral. Here we have this kind of turquoise. These are stones that Kazakhs continue to use in their jewelry to this very day. If it's sometimes hard to look at all of these artifacts made of stone and bone and wood from centuries ago, and to imagine just what the people themselves were like, not just their objects, then it's really useful to see a bust like this kind of artistic recreation of what these people would have looked like. The figure that we have here is called the Mayamir princess, and in fact, she came quite a bit before the Scythians that are famous in the Valley of the Kings. This was a mound that was in the nearby village of Mayamir, and the woman that was found there is remarkable in her phenotype, in her physical appearance, because she really doesn't look like the Asians that we would expect to come from this area. In fact, she has more of a kind of European figure. The artist here has done quite a striking job of recreating this and showing what these people might have looked like. When we were out at the dig, we could see those flakes of gold that were part of this person's jewelry laying there at the bottom of this big ditch, but we couldn't get up close because the only way down there was this tall ladder. Well, here in the museum, we can see exactly the same kind of gold. Inside this case, we have these kind of gold flakes that would have formed different patterns to decorate jewelry, to decorate belts, to decorate different elements of their outfits, including, by the way, the outfits that were also worn by the horses. And here we even have this fascinating kind of object, this kind of gold thread that was even used to sew together their outfits. That is just how elaborate these decorations were, that even little pieces of thread would be made out of gold. Well, the rain has thankfully died down a little bit, so we can head out and have a little walk around the grounds around the museum here. And I've started to think just how cool it must be to be an archaeologist in Kazakhstan. You get to come out to this beautiful landscape. They get put up in these cool little cabins around here. And just look how it's decorated. It's decorated with all of these mythological creatures that you've been digging up from these graves. These kind of beaked, winged lion figures, these winged horses. You know, these were once kind of secrets hidden inside the earth, and now they have been discovered by these very archaeologists, and they stalk the grounds here, giving their character to this special place, the Valley of the Kings. As the archaeologists covered the digs to protect them from the rain, we got to speak to their leader, Dr. Zainola Samashev. Dr. Samashev is one of the most famous archaeologists to specialize in nomadic cultures, and he told us about how he first made the Valley of the Kings famous 20 years ago.
В 1997 году я приехал сюда с группой профессоров из...
I came here in 1997 with a group of scientists from the Kazakh National University, professors from the University of Kemirov, and 2 French scientists.
Выбрать здесь самый перспективный курган для совместных исследований.
This whole international group of Kazakhs, Russian, and French came here to start excavations on the burial mounds. We started from the mound number 11, and in 1998 we started to work on 2 other mounds. One of these 2 gave us some very interesting findings. 13 horses had been stacked in layers, and there were even the remains of a man and a woman. And this was just the beginning of this epic dig. The effort continues to this day, already 19 years later.
Были найдены 13 лошадей, уложены в 2 яруса, и останки 2 людей, мужчины и женщины. И вот с этого началась эта эпопея.
The findings at Berel became symbols of Kazakhstan. 3 archaeological monuments can now be considered such symbols. First of all, Berel, then Otrar, and then the Issyk Mounds. These are symbols of Kazakhstan because they show the scientific and cultural significance of the country and represent what Kazakhstan is all about.
Определяет научное, культурное лицо Казахстана и представляет Казахстан во всем мире.
Looking for more information about the burial finds, we have come to an unexpected place, the small town of Urken Naryn. With only 6,000 people, it's just a blip on the map, but it was founded in 1756, and it is home to the region's best museum, the local history museum. The museum is a modest one-room affair, but it is full of fascinating exhibits. But as soon as you walk in, there's one guy that will catch your eye, the man on the throne down there. So let's start by paying him a visit. Well, it seems only right that when you first come to the museum, you should come and pay your regards to the king, and what a king he is. On this throne made with kind of gilded wood, wearing this flashy coat and this awesome hat. He's in fact a copy of the real thing, the Sak king himself. The famous Kazakh artist and archaeologist Krem Altunbekov took the findings from the burial mound and made it into a fascinating exhibit at the National History Museum in Astana. But as the director of this museum explained to us, when kids come to this museum, they are drawn to visuals and they would love to see that exhibit themselves. Astana is quite far away, so they did their best to recreate it with their own local talents. Yes, that's right. The museum workers, there are not many of them here on staff, put all of their labor together, all of their creativity, and with that they really created quite an intriguing exhibit here. You can see that the hands have been made out of some kind of clay or paper mache, the face very kind of attentively sculpted. You can feel that this is maybe not a professional job, but it's the work of a passionate amateur, and it really does make an impression. Now look at this cartographic wonder that we have here, this kind of relief map that was made by the museum workers out of gypsum plaster, showing the region running all the way from Burial, where we saw the mounds, down to us right here in Urken Naryn. You have this entire valley that's full of idyllic villages running all the way up to the twin peaks here of Beluga, that sacred mountain for Siberian shamanic people. When you can look at it from above, you really get a sense of the landscape here, and you really get a sense of just what a special area this is, this valley running all the way up to that mountain. And you can understand why they would have once said that this was the so-called navel of the world, and that this place had a certain energy, a certain spirituality that continues to bring people like me in search of its history. If the Scythian artifacts that we found in Burial and Ulkenların felt ancient, then there's a place in eastern Kazakhstan where we can go even farther back in time. It's called Akbauer. 38 kilometers from the provincial capital of Uсть-Kamenogorsk, Akbauer is thought by archaeologists to be a kind of Neolithic observatory. Using notches in stone, piles of rocks, and a special cave called the Grotto, ancient people in this part of Kazakhstan once studied the stars and the rotations of the celestial spheres. The terrain is rocky and severe, with nobody in sight but shepherds and a handful of caretakers. They will be of some help because the observatory, hidden in a rocky hillside, can be easy to miss. To get up to this grotto observatory, first we have to tap into the agility of the local mountain goats in order to scale some seriously steep stones. When you first enter the grotto, it might at first seem like this is just a regular rock overhang where Kazakh shepherds could come to shelter themselves from the wind and rain. But you look around and you start to notice that there's a lot of funny things going on here. This hole up here is what they say was the ancient viewfinder for this rock observatory. And people would use this to make all sorts of astronomical calculations. But how did this hole get here? And indeed, how did this stone get here? When archaeologists look at the way that these stones come together, they say, this is not natural. This above stone must have been placed here in some fashion. But as far as they know, during those years, this kind of heavy engineering technology did not exist. So it remains a mystery to this day how this whole structure itself was formed. Because this viewfinder, as we're going to call it, looks straight up to the sky, it held great significance for later nomads who worshiped the sky god called Tengr. It said that shamans would come up to this special place and they would use this hole to make a special entrance, dropping down as if they were falling from the heavens. To this day, this grotto is a common destination for those with shamanic beliefs or just anybody who believes in the miracle-giving powers of the heavens. And so we can see in the face of the rock, in this little wedge here, are dozens of little coins that people have left behind in thanks as kind of votive offerings. What's really neat about the Akbauer site is just how many objects of archaeological significance are located in one place. Just across from our observatory viewfinder here are these amazing petroglyphs. It's thought that they were made using red ochre, a kind of natural pigment that takes advantage of the iron in the soil to give it this red color that has lasted for centuries. Now, what's drawn here until now is something of a mystery. Some people say they can see humanoid figures, other people see animals like horses. But what's interesting to me is that until we decipher these to some degree of certainty, they can kind of be whatever you want them to be. It's kind of like clouds or a Rorschach test. What you see is in the mind of the beholder. For those who don't fancy scrambling up a steep cliff to see their petroglyphs, there are some petroglyphs at the Akbauer site that are more accessible. Just a short walk through some grass waving in the wind is this beautiful rock formation that looks like a kind of stack of pancakes. And even more interesting than the formation itself are the paintings that have been put on the rocks. Rather not paintings, but perhaps etchings, because it seems they've been carved right into the stone. Here, for example, is a beautiful picture of some kind of deer, and below it, a whole herd of them. But what do these pictures mean? Is it a kind of magical thinking, as some people suppose, a way to conjure up these animals before a big hunt? Or could it just be a form of amusement for some bored shepherd? It's something that we may never know, but that archaeologists continue to study. Even from kilometers away, you can see that on the peak of this hill, there is a massive pile of stones. And on other hills in the opposite direction, there are nearly identical piles. Archaeologists suspect that these piles must have been placed by some kind of ancient astronomer, because it turns out that they align along a perfect axis from north to south. Not far from the petroglyphs and different elements of the terrestrial observatory, this place is called the Ritual Square. As a kind of natural amphitheater, it's thought that people would collect here on certain holidays that were associated with the astronomical calendar. It may look like I'm just sitting atop a rock amidst a grassy field, but this valley is in fact a giant astronomical instrument. It works like this. Every March during the spring equinox, the sun rises through the notch in the mountain over there. The rays of the sun then come down here to this rock, bouncing off of a puddle of water that collects in this little pool. From there, it then refracts to the top of Mount Sorokin across the valley. Thousands of years ago, some people in this valley discovered the significance of these points in space: a ridge, a puddle, a peak. And they used these to reveal the eternal passage of time. Year after year since then, people have come to this very place to observe this seemingly miraculous alignment. And it's remarkable to feel this shift in perspective, to feel how the land has remained while time has passed by. Just as it's been remarkable to discover Kazakhstan with you. Not just Kazakhstan in the here and the now, but this land, how it's been and how it's moved through the centuries. Until next time, I'm Dennis Keane, Salbo, Paka, and goodbye.